infrastructure?
Huge problem.
Huge problem in the second district.
For the second district. We have a ton of concrete streets in the second district, and the problem that I've run into as association president is every year we get seated requests from the city. We get a form that allows us to list the top three, what we view as the top three seated requests. We can send that in. We can find out if we're going to get any seated money from the city. The problem is we don't find out that we've been awarded these seated dollars until it's already been sent out for bid on the project. So use an example of a street. If we wanted to start transitioning our concrete streets over to asphalt, we don't have that opportunity because we don't know that we've received money until the project's already been bid out. And if you have concrete streets, they bid it as concrete streets. You need to bring the neighborhoods that you're impacting into that conversation earlier, prior to sending out the bid package. So, like I said, Pine Valley's got 800 and some homes, so we've got tons of concrete streets. It would take a small sum of money to do it all at once. But if we could phase it in, that would be an opportunity for us. Granted, we realize it may take us, 10 years to get it done, but once we get that done, then we have asphalt streets. The city can come in and replace them, or can come in and repair them. Because right now, they come in and they patch concrete streets with asphalt. And that lasts maybe a couple months. So then I got to call 311 or I call the street department and say, hey, I got a pothole. Guess what? They come out with more asphalt. So it's just a temporary Band-Aid. We've got to find a real solid solution for our streets. Like I said, especially in the second district, because I walked Woodland Lake, the other day. They've got similar streets to ours. Some of the cul-de-sacs are in pretty bad shape. We've got, that's what people see on a daily basis. If they hit that pothole for the 5th time driving out of their neighborhood, they get really ticked off. And I get those phone calls wanting to know, what are we going to do? And so, I say, call your city councilman, call the mayor's office, call 311, call the street department. I find the more phone calls they receive, the more kind of reaction I get out of them, rather than if I just call them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Legacy Fort Wayne and the Light Lease Trust Fund.
Well, I think, to stay positive, I think, the mayor has tried to do his best to get out there and get public input. And I think that's key. Whether you agree with some of the ideas that have been thrown out there, that's for another kind of conversation. But I think it's important that you do get public input, or at least you try and get public input. If people don't show up to those meetings to give their public input, then you know what? That was their choice. But at least the administration, at least from what I can see in the ones that I've attended, are trying to make those relations, or trying to get the public input. Bottom line is it's going to come down to the mayor and city council as to what we do with those funds. And I have, from day one, have pushed that we need to make sure that that's treated much like an endowment. Let's protect the principal. Let's use the capital appreciation from the funds. Let's use the income from the funds to fund these certain kind of projects on an annual basis. So you could earmark, say you wanted to earmark $10 million for economic development. That $10 million would be protected. You would use whatever capital appreciation or income comes off of that $10 million, on an annual basis to fund some of these projects. Now, are you going to be able to do one big splash project? No. But the idea is to build a legacy. And if we spend this $41 million, which I'm a little bit leery of, because it's very easy, from what I've seen from council, is that it comes in kind of 1 million chunks. What I don't want to have happen is that, we get all these different requests, we start spending this money without having a game plan in place, and we turn around going, hey, where'd that 41 million go? Well, it's gone. So that's why like I said, from day one, I've pushed to have an investment policy, which the investment policy will kind of dictate as to how those monies will be invested, what it will be invested in and what it won't be invested in. If there's a fixed income portion to it, what kind of credit quality will that fixed income have? On the equity side, are we going to invest in Philip Morris, which sells cigarettes? Are we going to allow that? Or are we going to have a kind of a social conscious type portfolio where you invest in Heinz ketchup and all the good things? But that's what's going to be in the investment policy statement. Then you've got the spending policy, which will dictate, okay, are we going to use like a 3-year average of our capital appreciation or income and then release those funds? Are we going to use a 5-year? I find it interesting that through this, through the last 5 years, this market that we've kind of been through, this truly roller coaster market, we've only been sitting down with our advisor once a year. I would think with the type of market we've been through, we should at least had quarterly updates saying, okay, here's where we are, here's where we need to be, we need to make this shift, equity market's really kind of scary, maybe we need to shift a little bit more to the fixed income side to kind of preserve, what we've done to this point, our growth to this point, so we don't end up losing it. But we didn't have those conversations, and I think that's a skill set that I would bring to City Council that's unique, because you don't have anybody with my kind of education and my kind of background on council to ask those questions. I'm not saying that I'd have all the answers, but you have to have the knowledge to know to ask those questions.
Well, one of the things, that raises the point that, the committee that's supposed to be overseeing the Light Lease Trust Fund, they've met, I think, once a year annually. Right. At the same time, they meet with the advisors, we're pretty close to it. And there doesn't seem to be any follow through with even following the bylaws of the committee. They don't elect officers. How much is that needed to be looked at as well?
Well, as like I said, I think that's going to fall the way I read the trust document, which is interesting because that fell off about February of 2009, or is it 10? No, it was 10. I think it was February of 10 of when that actually ended, and I would question that process. That should be a city council process. The city council and the mayor, that's who's in charge of those funds. So I think we need to adjust the way we've been doing business because, granted, we've kind of been in this rut for the last 35 years, and I think now it's time for city council and the mayor's office to step up and start taking management, start asking those tough questions. I know DeMayo Schneider, who's the current advisor. I've worked with DeMayo Schneider in the past. They're a very good firm. I'm sure there's an investment policy out there, but it's not anywhere for the public to look at. And I would think with all the questions and the concerns surrounding the Light Lease Fund, that we would have that policy front and center, just like we do the budget, so the public could see it, the public could take a look at it, and understand what the process is going to be. And that's how. And I think that's what's lacking, is that you don't have that public confidence in the elected officials because they don't understand the process. And we have to do a better job of getting that information out to the taxpayers so they do understand the process, and then we can start rebuilding that trust.
Well, and to take a couple steps back and look at the bigger picture, isn't that one of the issues I think that you feel, transparency in government all the way around?
Absolutely. Like I said, you can go look at the procedural issue that we've had, whether you look at prior approval, whether you look at the threshold, you've got the environmental study that was done on the OmniSource property. I attended a meeting last night of somebody looking to, presenting something to do with kind of like a railroad kind of thing. But again, is that necessarily the best use of taxpayers' dollars to go out and purchase that piece of property when we have no idea of what the true cost is going to be? Because buying the property is one thing. Then if we have to spend an additional funds to clean the property up and make it usable, that's a whole nother ballgame. And I find it interesting that there's a lot of talk about that piece of property, and they've gone out and they've cleaned it up and they've taken down the old train depot, and I imagine they'll plant some grass. But again, before that's more of a private industry. That's where the private sector comes in and can do something, not necessarily city government.